So really, something Moldova does not actually look at is, well, it does look at it. It says we don't have any fossil fuels, we don't have minerals to mine, so we don't actually have anything that we can actually do. But actually, that's not very true. The human beings create more waste. So the upcycle is actually there for waste. And when everyone keeps talking about sustainable goals, it's actually more important to look at the social inclusion, not just economical inclusion, but the circular economy. So I'm just going to use as an example case City Hall, some data which I got from City Hall. So 6 city buildings, they use 580 megawatts per year. 17 medical institutions which are under the City Hall control are 10,220 megawatts. And then you've got the 420 odd trolley trams for the transportation that uses 42,000 megawatts per year. So energy-wise, that costs City Hall just over 8 million euros. And that's not all of the electricity consumption, obviously, of City Hall. So when we talk about plastics, Chișinău itself actually generates enough plastic to solve its own energy problem and some other elements as well. So when we talk about recycling plastics, that's great. But when you're recycling plastic, you're also creating microplastics, which are actually very harmful because this gets into your food, into the land. So it moves around with the wind and everything else. But it's more interesting to look at the energy recovery from such plastics because roughly 30% goes into the landfills. Types of plastics. I'm going to be very fast, so it's better for everybody. But the type of plastics vary. You've got your plastics from bottles, your plastic bags, your PVC pipes from your construction work, for your plumbing. You've got your plastics for your plastic chairs, schools, offices. There's plastics everywhere. So there's a multitude of plastics. It's not just about domestic plastic, which is around food wrappings, etc. Energy outputs, which you can do, and this is based on the technology I've been playing around with, I'm looking at, which is very viable for Moldova in a decentralized manner because it's actually very small. You actually can generate 576 kilos per day of coke granules, which actually are used within the steel works or can be combined with tarmac for road surfacing, which increases your road durability. You could actually generate from one unit 1,000 houses power, which over 1,000 houses, which do use for up to 36 kilowatts. You could actually generate battery storage, fill the batteries up for up to 40 megawatts, so for battery farms, storage backup, or balancing the network, Mold Electrica. You could actually implement charging points across the city through street lights, and you would actually be able to charge 2,000 vehicles for 20 kilowatts, and 20 kilowatts actually lets a car drive for 100 kilometers. Surprisingly enough, a fun fact, 1 kilo of plastic lets a Tesla vehicle drive for 50 kilometers. So it's strange when you look at plastics and a Tesla car, because it's all based on electricity, but 1 kilo of plastic can fuel a Tesla car for 50 kilometers. Out of the same output, you could actually generate 700 kilos of hydrogen. So that could be for storage, for power. That could be for buses, or you could blend that, like the UK is looking at doing, 20% with the grid for normal gas supplies. Another off-take to it, as an additional, is hot water and heating. You can generate 48 megawatts per day for central heating or hot water. Or better yet, you can use the heat and possibly dry the sewage for up to 900 kilos per hour, making the dried sewage easier to transport. And because of the calification on dried sewage, there is actually a burning value energy to that, can actually be used in cement kilns or other industries such as that. How does it work? Well, it's actually a very small unit, and I will actually show you the size and the outlay of a unit. So you're just generating from a mini shredder the plastics, 540 kilos per hour. The unit actually uses 250 kilowatts per hour of its own power, so it's self-efficient. The plastics can get converted down to diesel, so 440 litres per hour and 140 kilos of gas per hour. That is then combined into a designed diesel and gas turbine generator, which will give you 1.75 megawatts per hour and 2 megawatts of heat. You can then put that into battery storage or put that directly into the grid. So I've just done some numbers based on City Hall's consumption. Yeah, it's very, very simple. Like I said, City Hall uses 8 million euros roughly of electricity for its medical institutions, its tram trolleys, and 6 buildings of City Hall. So one unit actually will generate, like I said, 42 megawatts of energy, 48 megawatts of heat. But what's really interesting here, just based on prices, if you're selling heat in Moldova, it's actually in megawatts per kilowatt. It should be roughly around 12.5 cents. Well, I've actually calculated it on 8.5, which is also the same price as electricity. But really, it's about net metering, what you're putting into the system, because City Hall do use more than what the numbers I've got. So you can actually load it into the system as an offset. And then there's still the heat, which is something else to either sell or use internally. On top of this, there's the carbon credit value. So you're generating 24 carbon credits per day because you're getting rid of nearly 13 tons of plastic, which brings in another added value of 840,000 euros per year. Then you've got your coke granules. So again, this is about circular economy, using everything. There is no waste. So I've just done some very simple. One unit does not suffice. You would actually have to have 4 units, which actually makes it even better because you can have north, east, south and west. And that means lower logistics for collections of the plastic. Also means that you've got 4 different points to add heat into Termoelectrica's network if needed, or you can actually use the heat for sewage. So really the running costs and everything, a unit, you're talking about 8 million euros. That's excluding the environmental impact and the infrastructure you need around it, because it's a closed infrastructure, not open air, there's no chimney. But there's plenty of buildings around Chișinău which can be used from the Soviet period. So how big is it? Well, the actual space needed is 18 meters by 18 meters, really. So here's just a little bit of a floor plan on existing systems, which are actually implemented. So it's not a great big place, and Moldova does not need big equipment. It needs a decentralized, small approach so that they can implement different technologies in different parts of the country. So really, you're just taking the plastic, you're shredding it up. You've got a totally digitized control panel, and then really just converting out into gas and diesels, which, what is that? Is basically oil, which is the original part of plastic anyway. So you're just breaking it back to what it used to be. So plastics won't solve any real serious problem in the long term for Moldova within the energy element. So you've got to look at wind, solar, battery and hydro. And I don't mean hydrogen gas, I mean hydro, I mean water. So if you say Moldova uses around 950 megawatts, that's 22,800 megawatts per year. Well, the bottom line really is to actually solve and make Moldova sustainable and potentially a net exporter. You would need 6.9 gigawatts of solar and other elements, renewable energy elements, to suffice that, because you've got to multiply the usage easily by 4. You can do a cell. You can have 1 gigawatt. That's great, but it's not going to solve Moldova's need because it's only going to cater for sometimes 250 megawatt, depending on the time of year. The storage is more interesting. Battery storage, it's very expensive. And at one point in the world, we're not going to have enough materials for it. But that's where hydro comes in. Moldova has plenty of hills, and you only need a 20-meter difference in the ground to make reservoirs. So these can actually be dotted across the country and combined with solar or wind turbines. Really, if you look at the projects across Europe, how much I've invested, those projects are large scale. So is it really attractive, Moldova? Yes, Moldova is very attractive for renewable energy. If you take into consideration the nuclear power station in the UK, Hinkley, 18 years plus for the construction, £26 billion to do 3.2 gigawatts. You can actually install 3 gigawatts of solar within 1 year at a fraction of the price. If Moldova actually focused specifically on various elements of renewable energy, it could actually, through renewable energy, have the baseline price of 60 euros per megawatt. But in order to do that, it's not by building a 1 megawatt wind turbine or a 1 megawatt solar farm. It's large size projects, but not a specific technology, multiple. And that's very important going forward. And this was a case scenario we were looking at in October when you look at the amount of electricity purchased from Transnistria. Why is it purchased from Transnistria? Because it's cheaper. On the wind turbine side, actually, if you look at the southern parts of Moldova, there's 1 gigawatt of wind energy, which is completely untapped. And that is strange, but not very strange, really. But that you can have 1 gigawatt of potential turbine power from just the southern part because of the geological side and the environment is perfect and there's enough wind. The other side to this is being circular again. You need to look at all waste. Organic waste in Moldova, well, the wineries and the fruit producers, they're generating over 100,000 tons of waste. One of the biggest problems the agricultural sector in Moldova's got is it costs too much for fertilizer. And because Moldova does not have enough animals, it cannot generate fertilizer. So there's not enough dairy cows and so on and so on. It's actually going down the dairy cow scenario. So you don't have the natural substances to generate fertilizer for the organic land. And agriculture is a growing market now in Moldova. So how do you do that? Well, cities, villages, they do generate food waste. These can actually be easily implemented. And one of the fastest way to do this is using heat to take out the moisture, to speed up the process, and also it helps reduce the methane outputs. Sewage, like I said, if you're generating heat, you can actually use that heat to actually dry sewage. The biggest problem is with sewage, and this is actually from the plants I've seen in Chișinău, is industrial waste is put into the sewage as well. So it's very, very difficult to take that sewage and convert it into fertilizer, because when you have human waste, you've got antibiotics and other things which are in there because it comes through your body and it goes into the stream. But when you add industrial waste, that's a different pollutant. It's higher risk and it's very, very difficult to remove. So to put that on agricultural land as a fertilizer, that is more dangerous than just more dangerous. You're just going to kill off your agricultural output, and you won't be able to sell it to the European Union because you do have to provide tests on your product and that there's no heavy metals and so on and so on. Then we have medical waste. Well, medical waste, 20 to 25% of medical waste needs to be incinerated because it's hazardous. You can't just bury it in the ground, which actually does happen in Moldova. Moldova generates, not Moldova itself, but the 17 institutions under City Hall, they generate roughly 91 tons of medical waste. Well, if you take 25% of that needs to be incinerated due to the risks, and and any other waste you're putting in the ground, you're actually contaminating the groundwater. And the groundwater, again, that's dangerous to your agricultural sector and other elements. So medical waste actually can be incinerated. And when you look at the waste to energy system for plastics, that you're breaking down gas and diesel, though the diesel can actually be used for the incineration of the medical waste. Now, again, this is about circular economy. What is the output from disposing the waste? The medical waste? Well, heat, hot water. You can generate heat and hot water from that mini incinerator. So again, you're finding another output for the waste. Now, waste actually has many outputs if they are properly looked at. Like I said, is it circular or is it not? Well, yes, medical waste can be made circular, and it doesn't have to go into the landfills. And you're able to use the fuel from the plastics. Now, you're protecting the underground water and cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is very, very important. And this is something which, again, Moldova is going to have to address very fast. And that even includes City Hall and municipalities across the country, because there's a lot of illegal landfills. So what are the real problems which Moldova's had? Well, it's had a few. COVID-19, then the invasion of Ukraine, and on top of that, the reliance on external energy sources. So you either got the gas, which was cheap from Russia, now you've got to buy the gas at a higher price. Then you're buying the electricity from Transnistria, so your energy security is never secure. And then you've still got buying electricity from Europe as well at higher prices on the European market. So does it not make sense to start looking at what you actually generate the most of? Waste. It's not going to solve all problems, but it's a small problem. But it's the environmental impact which is the most important as well to this going forward. So what is the future? Is it bleak or bright, really? Well, are all high-tech solutions the best? No, they're not. Just because it's a high-tech solution, the price tag may not make any sense at all for Moldova. Big or small solutions, what's best? Moldova needs small solutions which she can put across the country. Not big, because you're going to have too much logistics, too much red tape, too many environmental elements. Moldova's not ready for that. What role does City Hall play at large in the scheme of things? Very simple. It can actually process its own waste, for example, to create energy. It can look at its environmental impact, and that includes car pollution, its medical waste of all of its institutions underneath it, providing charging points for vehicles. Again, like I said, one unit would not do this, but Chișinău itself does generate enough plastic waste to actually do 5 units. But 4 units, based on the numbers I was provided, would actually suffice, and it is economically viable, highly viable for City Hall. Should Moldova have a carbon exchange? Yes, it should. Don't know why it hasn't. I did have an exchange platform for this online, but due to recent changes in legislation around cryptocurrencies, because I was using blockchain technology for the immutability, I decided to disable it because there's no point. If you can't use the technology, well, move on. Does Moldova have any other assets other than minerals or fossil fuels? No, it doesn't have any. Just waste. Human beings. Use what you've got to make a circular economy. You've got to look at how is Elon Musk going to put man on Mars? Well, and how do people stay in the space station? They recycle waste. That's how they survive. And that is how you need to look at this from the circular economy. What is waste and what can be reused? Not everything makes sense financially. Example, recycling plastic doesn't make sense. It's more expensive than new plastic. But if you're actually recycling the energy functionality of plastic, it makes more sense financially. Again, domestic solutions or international solutions, what's best? International ideas could be best. but you need to make a domestic solution. When you look at lower economies like Africa and Latin America, they actually don't use high-tech solutions. They come up with some very, very low-cost domestic solutions which work. And there's a reason why for that is because some of them rely on carbon credits or small donors. So they have to shift with a balance which is smaller. And when you take those small projects and you combine them, they're actually a very big project. The more smaller projects you can roll out, they all link together, as long as they focus themselves on a circular economy element. That is it for me.